So I am a hybrid shooter. What I mean by that is I shoot both photo and video on the same camera. I don't have a cinema camera and then a photo camera. I do everything on the one camera. Now, because of that, there's obviously a lot of settings that you're gonna have to change. I shoot in 4K, I shoot in 1080, I shoot in 1080 120 frames per second, and then I also shoot photos in fully manual. If you're new to this camera or you're not familiar with this camera, there is a lot of settings that you have to change to be able to get to all those different modes. And it's not easy to change those settings quickly if you don't know how to use the camera. So I'm gonna go over with you how I have my camera set up for complete versatility and convenience. I wanna be able to quickly go to a mode and then quickly go back to a different mode. So I'm gonna be going over really high level, the basic settings that I have this camera set up to be able to do all the different things I like to do. Let's flip to an above angle and we'll do that. So first things first, this is the Sony A7 III. I have the 85mm f1.8 on here just because it's a big lens and I can do that and not have to worry about it falling over. So there's a ton of settings on the camera here. You don't need to worry about them all. I'm just gonna talk to you about the ones that I use, the ones that are important to me. So for me, the most important thing is the mode dial right here. You're gonna see that there's a ton of letters on here, and if you're new, you might not know what they mean. Don't worry about it too much. When you first start, you're probably gonna be using aperture priority and shutter priority. Those are the ones that most people commonly use. You may even be using full auto too. But once you get a little bit more confident, you're gonna wanna shoot everything, specifically photos, in M, which is manual. Full manual mode just gives you complete control over your image. If something's slightly off, you're gonna be able to correct it. Hopefully by knowing in your head what it is that you need to change. So for me, the three most important things I'm gonna use are M, manual mode, number 1, and number 2. I don't use the video mode because I have video assigned to number 2 and number 1. Now, number 2 for me is always going to be 24 frames per second, 100 megabits, 4K video. So if I want to shoot 4K, if I'm shooting YouTube video, it's going out in 4K, I will use number 2, okay? Number 1, I will have assigned to 1080p, 120 frames per second video. So if I need to do any form of slow motion, I'm shooting it in mode number 1. Now these are modes that I set myself, and I'll show you in a little bit how to do that. For now, we're just showing you how I have my camera set up. M is what I shoot photos, so completely manual. Everything is adjustable here, my aperture, my shutter speed, my ISO, all completely manual. Now I also use this mode for 1080p, 24 frames per second, 50 megabit video. So if I need to shoot video at 24 frames per second, so let's say there's a lot of, I don't know, flicker from an LED light in an event, I will swap to manual mode, and then that gives me my 1080p, 24 frames per second. If I quickly need to go back for B-roll, I then just jump to mode number 1. Mode number 2 is for my 4K. Those 3 things will cover me to shoot everything I need for both photo and video. Let's take a look at my ISO right now. You see my ISO is set to 400. This dial here I have assigned to control my ISO. That's something that I use on a regular basis if I need to quickly change something. And let's say I need my aperture to be f1.8 and I need my shutter speed to be 1/50th of a second. The only way to increase brightness or decrease brightness is going to be with my ISO. So that's how I have that assigned to my wheel right there. The wheel on the top right here I have assigned to my aperture. So if I need to change my aperture, I'm doing it up here. If you're using a lens, let's say like the Sony a 24mm G Master, that has a aperture ring on it. So if you have an aperture ring on here, this aperture wheel here will not work. Just bear that in mind. And then on the front here, the other wheel that I have is for my shutter speed. So if you see, if I change that, it changes my shutter speed. So for all my modes, for mode 2, 1, and manual, these all do the same things: ISO, aperture, shutter speed. That's all I need for the basis of everything for photo and for video. The joystick right here, if you watch one of my other videos, you'll see that I have this assigned to clear image zoom. And then I have C1 assigned to go to my autofocus mode. If I want to swap to manual quickly, if I need to adjust focus, my autofocus isn't picking up, I literally click that button, change to manual, and you can actually do that in the middle of recording too. So C1 for me is assigned to manual. C2 is assigned to crop mode. You can't see it right now because I'm just shooting the table, but you see this little symbol right here when I click this button, so C2, that disappears. That means we're in full frame mode. Click it again, we're in crop mode. So now I have 1.5 times whatever the lens is being used. So this is an 85 at full frame mode. like that, it will be 85. If I click this 85 now becomes 127. So that is very, very useful for myself. I also have C3 here available. Right now I actually have it assigned to clear image zoom as well. The video that I shot recently required that we had smooth clear image zoom, and that's that. So I also have C3 assigned, but I don't really have a use for this right now. Everything that I need to use is based off of what I've just shown you right there. My AF on button right here is assigned to focus hold. So what that means is if I'm shooting photos or even video too, and I need my focus to just stay locked on to that particular part, I just click and hold AF on, similar to back button focusing, and that will keep my focus locked onto that. If I'm in photos as well, AEL is assigned to eye autofocus. So I'm sure you've seen or heard of Sony's fantastic eye autofocus system. That is what I use to get to that. So hopefully you can understand it's just way easier to have things set up the way that I do. I can quickly change most of the time without even looking, change my settings and know that I'm in what I want to be. If I'm on 2, I know I can just change it to M with 2 clicks, back up to 1 with 1 click. So it's really easy to use. Just for me, for photo and video, way easier than how they have it set up out the box. And honestly, you should always change that anyway, because it's never great straight from the factory. So now let's show you how I would actually change the settings to be able to do what it is that I do, specifically on the dial first. So if you want to change your 1 and 2 to be the same as I do, or even something else, go to video mode first. The reason for that is the basis of all video settings should be based around the video settings. So go to your video mode first. It's going to have the safe zone bars on there already for you. You can change those. That's a whole video in itself. But we're going to leave it like this. Let's say I want to have my shutter speed set to 1/50th, as we always do at 4K, 24 frames a second. Aperture is fine at f2.5. ISO is fine at 800. Okay, we're in manual exposure mode. Now let's go to number 1, tab 3, down to memory. So the settings that are currently set to the camera, whatever I click on, 1 or 2, will go to mode 1 or 2. So I want mode 2 to be 4K, which is what we have everything set up right now as. Let's click OK. You see how it says registered? So now that means all those settings have been registered to number 2. So now let's change it so that number 1 is exactly the same settings, just 120 frames per second video. So you see 120. Go back to number 1, tab 3, memory, change that to number 1. Actually, there's one thing we need to do. We need to change shutter speed to 2/50th, 180 degree rule. Now, memory, number 1. So now we've assigned 120 frames per second to number 1. So now you see if we go back to number 2, 24 frames per second, 100 megabit 4K video. Go to number 1, 120 frames per second, 100 megabit 1080p video. So that's how we have that set up. And then manual is literally whatever you change the settings in the camera right now. So if I go in and change, I don't know, let's change this to 4K for whatever reason, that will stay in manual mode. So now let's go back to 1 and now go back to manual. You see how I'm in 4K still? If I were to change that to 1080, go to 1, then go back. And you see I'm still in 1080. So manual is just literally whatever you leave it in. So that's great for video. And then you just shoot photos as you will. All your controls are as I had them set up before. So that's how you change your dial right there to use the same things that I do. Now let's say you want to change all your buttons. That's even easier, to be honest with you. Go into tab 2, go across to number 8, I believe. Yeah. So custom keys. This is how you change all of your keys. So whether you want to change C4, C1, C2, this is how you change all that. Now you can have it set differently for photography. You can also have it set differently for video. What I normally recommend is have it set the same thing for everything, because otherwise you're going to be in one mode, think you're changing a setting and it doesn't work, and then you just have to think about too much. So assign everything to photography, and then in video what it'll do is it'll often follow custom for photography. So just use photography as your main thing. You can assign it yourself if you want to, but this is just how I have mine set up. So then for custom keys, it then just gives you all your options. So custom button 1, custom button 2, which are these ones here, 1 and 2. And then you have your custom button 3, which is here, custom button 4, which is there. And you literally just click on it and go through, and you have masses of options for you. There's 22 pages of things that you can change there. So you can have it set up however you want. And that's literally how you do that. Very straightforward, and you just can do that for all your custom buttons. So you have on there your control wheels. So this is the control. As you know, I have mine set to ISO. Custom button 1, 2, 3, 4. You then have your multi-selection center button, which is this one right here. Yeah, just everything in there is changeable. If you want to change it, you can. If you don't have to. So that is how you change all of your settings on the camera. And that's how I have my camera set up. So there we go. That is how I have my camera set up for shooting both photo and video in a convenient way that allows you to quickly change all the settings without having to go deep into the menus and change everything, then go shoot what you want to shoot and then change back to something else, and you don't have to do that. If this video helped you out today, which I really hope it did, let me know down below in the comment section what is the thing that helped you out most, something that you thought, that's a great idea, I'm gonna do that. Really would love to hear from you guys. Other than that, appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.